Good sticks, everyone. Welcome to the Captain Avalanche Fancast, your unofficial source for all things Colorado Avalanche hockey and more from a fan perspective, hosted by me, Captain Avalanche Corey, and apparently he's just the international hockey guy now, Dom. Now, we're no insiders. We're not inside the locker room face-to-face with our favorite players, but we hope to create a relatable and welcoming environment because we're just like all of you listeners. Fans with a deep passion for the game of hockey, and in this case, the Colorado Avalanche. Today, we're going to talk about Canada being upset. Wait, no. That can't be right. The Olympics were in February. No. Canada has once again been upset on the world stage, but it isn't all bad. A team that has never won got their chance to shine. Finland and host country Switzerland faced off on the world stage for gold, and we'll tell you who walked away with the victory. Today, we'll finally have our best guess at what went wrong for the Colorado Avalanche, as well as some changes in leadership. Finally, the finals, the Stanley Cup Finals featuring the Carolina Hurricanes in the East and the Vegas Golden Knights to the West have begun. And we'll break down Game 1 and Game 2 as it happens. All that and more on today's episode of the Captain Avalanche Fancast. And just like always, as we near the end of this season, we've done just a little bit more growing than we did last year, and we definitely appreciate it. So if you like what we're doing here and you haven't hit that follow, subscribe, listen again, whatever that button is on whatever platform you're listening on, because we are available on almost all platforms, soon to be more, as a matter of fact. Please make sure you do if you're coming back on a weekly basis, even on a semi-weekly basis, a monthly basis. And the most important thing and helpful thing that you can do for us, tell your mom, tell your grandma, tell your dog, tell the crazy homeless man on the street corner about this show, even if you are not a fan of the Colorado Avalanche. If you just like hockey, you like hearing what people have to say, you like hearing what our silly goose asses have to say, and we really appreciate it. And also, in addition, Dom and I are very excited to share this news that was a recent development, and obviously barring any major changes, which for legal purposes I say can may happen. Dom and I are being graciously granted the opportunity to take this podcast to the next level, and we have been invited to join the Hockey Podcast Network. Now, we have not accepted the invitation yet, but we have met with their team. A great duo running that whole operation as well. Just a big supportive network that would give Dom and I the tools to, I think, grow this podcast in the way that we would like to, bring more to all of you listening every week, both during and in the off season. Gives us more platforms that we can reach more people on. And really, I think just the best opportunity for us. We are very, very, very excited at this potential future partnership. So we just wanted to share all that with you. Now, what does this mean for you as a listener? Nothing except that hopefully the quality of the content will continue to go up. But the best part is this is still going to be the Captain Avalanche Fancast. We have full creative control over the show. It is still our baby. We can still do with it whatever it is we please. There are no additional rules for us, no additional restrictions. We just get to bring you the same stuff that you'll love and hopefully grow even bigger. So we are very, very excited about that. Dom, any additional comments before we jump into our first segment here? If not, it's okay. Just wondering if you had anything to add.
Well, I think the key word for me is gratitude. Thank you to all of you who have continued to come in and listen to us each week, wherever you are, whenever you're listening. It gives us the confidence just to keep on going. We love talking hockey. We'd probably do it anyway, but the opportunity to get to share it with all of you is something truly special, and to the potential to be able to grow bigger and bring more love of the game to more people, to make sure this game truly is for everyone and can reach more people, is just, it's an honor of an opportunity, and to be looked at in that way. So like I said, just wonderful feelings of gratitude to all of you listening and to the network for even remotely considering us as a possibility. And it's just really cool. It's a blessing.
Absolutely. And if you're not familiar with the Hockey Podcast Network, give them a Google, because exactly as it sounds like, it is a whole network of different hockey podcasts. So if you're fans of other teams, for example, we talk about the Avalanche and the Sharks, but maybe you like the Avalanche and, I don't know. Who's good? The Canadians. Yeah, there you go. There are plenty of Habs podcasts. If you like the Avalanche and the Flyers, if you like the Avalanche and not the Avalanche, they have a podcast for you. And it is looking like we are being granted the gracious position to really kind of step in to be their main Avalanche podcast, which is a really, really cool feeling. And obviously, if there was another Avalanche podcast there, we would not see it as a rivalry, but as, support. And that's really what it's all about. And also, in joining that network, it will give Dom and I the opportunity to be more collaborative with other hockey creators, other people in this space, to bring you more unique content, have some guests on the show, which is something we have been wanting to do ever since we started. So that is something else that this partnership not will possibly bring, but will bring. So we've actually already been in contact with some of their other creators. So hopefully we will get the opportunity to work with them here pretty soon, even though we are about to go into the off season. But anyway, enough about the sappy good shit. Canada has been upset again.
Damn.
Canada is now the king of upsets. Spoiler alert, but not only were they upset to make the gold medal game, but were upset for bronze and didn't even walk away with a medal. That being said, neither did the U.S., which is quite curious that the two supposed superpowers of hockey didn't get a single medal, having all their best players or not. But this is actually a positive thing. It means other countries' hockey programs are developing in an upward direction and producing talent and coaching that is on par with some of the other best countries in the world. I love Canadian hockey, as was made very apparent during the Olympic season. It is where most of my favorite players are from, followed by Sweden, Finland, and Czechia. But when it comes to world tournaments, I don't want certainty. I do not want it to be a certainty that Canada and the U.S. will win and battle for gold, as fun as those games are. I want there to be healthy competition amongst the various nations who have qualified to compete at that top level. So to see the countries that did earn medals is very encouraging. But I haven't disclosed who and how they earned those medals. For that, I'll leave it up to Dom, who graciously requested this be top priority today. And frankly, that's very helpful to me, because I'm going to take this time to quickly bang out a section that may or may not be totally finished. So Dom, I'll pass it off to you to give our dear listeners the whole rundown.
Thanks, Corey. And yeah, it feels like a long time ago now, and crazy how fast the weeks go by. But to end May, we finished out this tournament of the IIHF World Championships, and again, hosted in Switzerland. And where we left off, Switzerland, Norway, Canada, and Finland were the four teams to qualify for the semifinals. In those matchups, Switzerland versus Norway and Canada versus Finland. Now, what's interesting here is I think I was excited to celebrate how this guaranteed the highest ever finish in the top division of the IIHF men's tournament for the Norwegian side ever. So when they were pummeled 6-0 by Switzerland, I wasn't surprised. I wasn't disappointed. I was still impressed that they made it this far, and happy for Switzerland to play in a gold medal game once again. I'm not going to dive into that too deeply, but what we maybe would be more surprised by, and maybe, I don't know, shouldn't have been, but Canada versus Finland. This game, Finland won 4-2. Finland's only loss was to Switzerland in the group stage. And if thinking back to our previous episode when I was talking through that, Corey, you had suggested, and I agreed, that maybe this Finnish team is a little bit weaker than other ones they've sent before, a little bit disjointed, but the one thing they did have is Sasha Barkov playing some incredible hockey, getting back after missing so much of the year, the Panthers missing the playoffs, and he was clearly playing like a man on a mission. And that proved to be a huge factor for them as they went through this tournament, and ultimately did get that win over Canada. So, You're right. The upset was everywhere. The one time I actually throw all my cards, all my chips behind Canada, and they can't even get a medal for me or my captain MacLeod. And my fear is that he's going to put this on himself as the captain and failing and think he shouldn't be the captain when he was doing a great job, clearly was very respected by all his teammates. So Corey, before I go any further, let's get some psychology. I want your thoughts on how this might affect MacLeod and those other players on Team Canada to not only lose at the Olympics and have to settle for silver, but to now have to settle for no medal at all. We'll get to that a little bit more in detail here in just a moment.
In my mind, with things like that, it's a 50-50 thing. It's one way or the other, where you either take it and it's demoralizing, it gets in your head, so the next time you're on that world stage, you're like, fuck, man, we've been in this situation before. We might lose here again, and it can be a real negative and it can mess with you hard. Or you try and frame it in a way where it's fuel, where you think to yourself, I know we were the better team. I know we can win these. And I'm not going to sit here and allow myself, my team to lose again. I'm going to push harder, be better, be the guy who gets that, game-winning goal. So I think it's really all about mindset of the individual athlete. I think that's why sports psychology is so important. It's all about how you frame it to yourself. And I mean, sometimes it's hard. The human brain works in mysterious ways. We'll actually talk about it here a little bit later. But sometimes, it does things that feel like they're out of our control. So, it's one way or the other, I think.
Absolutely. And this is going to be huge for not just MacLeod Celebrini, but also Sam Dickinson was on this roster. So for the Sharks, I really hope both of these young players, these tenants, these stars of the future that are going to carry this team, at least we hope, right? Obviously, MacLeod is a superstar and he's going to carry this whole league, but hoping Sam Dickinson does grow into his own and cement himself as a top pairing defenseman can feed off of this loss as fuel to show up in this next season with a chip on his shoulder and be ready to play harder, to play better, to learn from it. Even if it's not necessarily his fault, but just to be a little bit more intense, have a little bit more edge to him. I think that would be a great benefit. And so as we're talking about this, and it's not just that
Carolina
they
just scored,
lost.
by the way.
Yes, I had a buddy of mine just text me actually about that.
I did want to say really quickly, just to add to what you said about MacLeod Celebrini. I think with as close as his team came to the playoffs this year, just to fall that much short, right? And with as much as he put in individually for his team, I think he's motivated. I truly think after all that, he was not happy with going home early. Even though it was only his sophomore season, I think he wants a heck of a lot more out of his season of hockey. And I think the expectation of losing and just settling for a loss is something that he is ready to put behind him. So I think he's very motivated to win.
Absolutely. I know MacLeod is going to be very motivated to win. And it's just, again, with him being so young, the only caution I would have as something I am just now learning here at 7 years older than MacLeod is. So it feels reasonable caution. He's also just a superhuman. So it wouldn't surprise me if he already knows this. It's just a balance, right? He's going to put that burden on himself and that desire to do better. But it's a fine line between that productive, that healthy accountability, or taking that as fuel and becoming too self-critical in a toxic way and having that negative effect. So I have no doubt he's gonna dwell on this and take it. I just hope that he's uplifted as well. He doesn't become into a spiral of it, if you will. Balancing that, be kind to his mind while also taking it to take that anger and unleash that on his opponents, which, like you, I do think he's quite capable. He has shown nothing but poise in his time and an ability to up his compete level when needed, and just a wonderkind in every sense of the word. So without further ado, though, we've got some medals to talk about. So if you have any last thoughts on that before we get to the actual results of this tournament.
Yeah, just another brief thought. Oh, sorry, that was insane. I'm surprised he got back up after that. Another brief thought is what you just described reminds me a lot of a younger Nathan McKinnon, who I think was very, very, very critical of himself for things that you've just described. And he said that when he got a sports psychologist, it really changed his life, changed his perspective and his ability to play, and why he started, having 120, 130, 140 point seasons. So if Macklin, and I mean, I think with today's athletes, that's something that's a lot more common. So if Macklin doesn't have one of those already, I definitely think it'd be in his best interest to get one, because it's helped some of the game's best stars, I think, play at their best. Because as I will talk about later, the game of hockey is much more mental and emotional than it is physical. So to have that good and correct mentality, I think is everything, especially if you're a superstar.
Absolutely. Watch your screen.
Watching my screen. You must be very far ahead of me.
I'm on live, so
I'm at 744
sure
right now. How far behind is that from you?
I have it pretty small on my phone, so I can see my notes right now. So it is hard to read.
Well, evidently, there must be something interesting coming.
I'm at 714.
Oh, geez. Okay, yeah. So you're about 13 seconds ahead. So I just got to stop.
All right, I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, just wait for my obscene reaction here that I will obviously put a filter over in post. So just keep going. We'll get there.
You got it. Moving on to the results, though, we've kind of already outlined what some of it is. So let's talk that bronze medal game. Believe it or not, the Norwegian national hockey team defeated Canada to win bronze, a 3-2 overtime victory. Not only is it their best ever finish, there it is. There it is. That's the Canes tying it up. Let's go. Third period is Vegas's period. My ass. This is Carolina's period tonight.
Okay, now they just need to, win. Is this the quintuple OT game? Is it finally going to happen?
I mean, it's happening at some point in the series. This series is not allowed to end until we get 5 overtimes.
We have not had any games go more than 2 overtimes. I am praying for like a super overtime game. That is all I want. Ooh, no, that's not offside. That's
yeah, they review it and they confirm.
Okay, all good. Carry on.
So, anyways, this game for Norway, they played an incredible game against Canada. Canada was down 2-0 through 2 periods. They were down 1 after the first 7 minutes. They were down 2 13 minutes into the second, so just over 7 minutes remaining. It took all the way until they had the goalie pulled. They pulled Jet Greaves. With 1 minute and 16 seconds remaining, did Canada finally get on the board? Norway was playing some incredible defense and just keeping Canada to the outside. You had some interference and boarding penalties Canada was taking. It just was a bit of a sloppy game. Even Sidney Crosby ended up in the box for hooking at one point in the second. So great job by Norway to keep Canada to the outside, get them out of a rhythm, get them out of their game. But 2 goals in the final 1 minute and 16 seconds of the game for Canada to force overtime, both by Robert Thomas, the second of which coming off assist from Ryan O'Reilly and, of course, Macklin Celebrini with 8 seconds left in regulation. So Canada forces overtime when trailing to Norway with 8 seconds remaining. They scored 2 goals. Robert Thomas just on one, proving why he was held on to at the deadline, only for it to not matter at all. Noah Steen scoring for the Norwegians unassisted 3 minutes and 32 seconds into overtime to secure bronze, the first ever medal at the IIHF Worlds, at least in the top division for the Norwegian side. Oh, Corey, I wish I could have been able to watch this game because from everything I can see from the highlights and the stats, it was a great game. Canada was out shooting Norway 2-1, and Norway just was really playing a phenomenal defensive game, a frustrating game, and got some incredible goaltending from their netminder.
Yeah, I think it's always really tough when most of the time you think the momentum would be in Canada's favor, especially when you're down 2-0, you force the comeback. Like that feels like going into overtime. It's all Canada at that point, and then Norway wins anyway. So I mean, it's just it can be really hard.
Yeah, and that's why we love hockey. That's why we love this beautiful game.
You can fairness, have all these. I am working on a separate section here, so I'm like popping back in mentally.
Yeah, you're all good. But that's why we love this game. Anybody can win anytime they're out there on the ice, no matter what we think, which team is better. Canada is this superpower. They're led by the future greatest player in the entire world, and they lose to a team that wasn't was Norway. I don't think Norway was represented at this Olympics, at least on the men's side. So
no,
they will be at the next one, but they weren't even represented there. We didn't think there was even a single NHLer on the team, and we're proven wrong eventually, finding out that Tinus Luke Koblar, who had 9 points in 10 games played, he is in the Toronto Maple Leafs system. So we didn't know. We were looking, couldn't seem to come across anything at first, but love to see this growing. Right? See the sport growing in that country, to see them getting more opportunities to pull off an upset. It was, they took what Latvia does with upsetting Canada and took it to the next level to get a medal for it and to really lead that game almost wire to wire. So what an incredible performance, but I could keep perseverating on it forever, Corey. So how about I move on to the gold medal match?
Yes, sir. Let's hear all about it in the dirty play of one Timo Meier.
Yeah, and that's the unfortunate thing, because Timo Meier is a former Shark.
What's up with all these former Sharks being absolute rats, Dom?
Jeez.
I honestly wish I could tell you. I really, it's disappointing and a bit embarrassing, honestly. At least they're not Sharks anymore. So that helps me out a little bit mentally. Oh, I just saw why on the replay.
All right.
It's okay. But I admittedly root for Switzerland when it comes to these tournaments. I think they are knocked and they don't get enough credit. The fact, like, they should, to me, I think they're a better team consistently, and I think the numbers back me up, than Czechia. Honestly, when we talk about Czechia jumping in as being maybe number 5 behind the Sweden, Finland, in that 3-4 range behind Canada and the US, when we're talking world dominance, Switzerland has now made it to 3 straight gold medal games in the IIHF Men's World Championship. So this team that we don't always give a lot of credit to, they're consistent. They get great goaltending. We saw it from the women's side at the Olympics as well. They have more talent than we realize sometimes, and they play an incredibly solid style of hockey. It's unfortunate, though, that like I said, they've made it to 3 straight gold medal games and lost 3 straight.
I see now.
Yeah, now you see. They've lost 3 straight. Their goaltender for Switzerland, Leonardo Giannoni, last 3 gold medal games, he is 0-3 with a 970 save percentage. 0.970. He is 0-3 in gold medal games. Switzerland, after going on a massive run, once again, this time at home, have now lost 3 straight gold medal games and been shut out in each of them. Leading the tournament in goals, get shut out in the gold medal game in a 1-0 overtime defeat to Finland. It's just such a heartbreaking one. You felt like this year they'd finally break through and get the gold, especially in front of their home crowd, right? On their home ice in a gold medal game. And it sucks. It's not a fun fact, but it is a fact that Nino Niederreiter is now the first player in history to have 5 losses in the men's world championship final. Believe it or not, he's setting a world record for most losses in a gold medal game for IIHF.
I did see that. It feels so bad for him.
Yeah. It actually shows you the consistency that Switzerland has had.
I do not feel one bit bad for him because Nino Niederreiter is who ended the Avalanche's miracle season in 2014 with a rookie Nathan McKinnon on his breakaway goal for Minnesota. Fuck Nino Niederreiter.
Okay, well, I'll leave you to that one. But the reality is, again, the goaltending. 3 straight times they've been shut out. They lose 1-0 in overtime this year, 1-0 to the U.S. in overtime last year, and 2-0 to Czechia the year before. And that's the other thing. Or I think it was Czechia. Maybe it was Canada they lost to the year before for the 3 straight losses. But in any case, the point is, I do feel for Switzerland because they've been there consistently in the final more than any other team, and yet they haven't been able to take home gold. It's just a little sad. Well, no matter what you feel about Niederreiter, I do feel for Switzerland, especially in front of their home crowd.
Yes.
And I guess just to wrap up, I hinted at it, I said it a bit before, but Finland proving us that we shouldn't be doubting them, coming out with the win. Like I said, Sasha Barkov had a great tournament overall, and it was Konsta Helenius who got the overtime winner, 10 minutes and 42 seconds into overtime, assisted by Anton Lundell and Mikko Lehtinen. So that is a wrap on your IIHF Men's World Championships with how the final standings went. With Canada in 4th, you did have Czechia 5th, Latvia 6th, Sweden 7th, and US all the way down in 8th, just based on how the seeding worked out, the rankings from group play before the knockout rounds, and then on down from there. It was Italy and Great Britain who are going to be set for relegation for next year's tournament. But I believe that means we're going to get Kazakhstan in and one other. I'm trying to remember what the other team that'll be moving up to the top division is for next year. So Corey, if you happen to know, please jump in. But otherwise, we can move on.
Not off the top of my head.
Alrighty. Well, thank you everyone for letting me bring you some more hockey from around the world. I always love when hockey is played for country. I know we talk a lot about for club, obviously, with the Avalanche and the Sharks, but it's always really cool when we get some international hockey, and it'll be really cool to see how I know they have plans to evolve the All-Star game. Corey, I don't know if you're planning to talk about it, but maybe this is a little Easter egg for later on tonight or the next episode.
I did not have a plan to talk about it, so depending on where we are at after our next 2 conversations, we will see. Otherwise, we can definitely talk about it tonight. Otherwise, it is a next episode kind of thing. Man, this is Jordan, I believe. Jordan is trying to blow the game for his team, I guess. What the fuck are we doing? Why would you just dive on your goalie?
What time are you at?
I am very far ahead. I see that Carolina has a power play right now. I'm seeing the replay for like the 20,000th time, and I'm just trying to figure out what Stahl is trying to accomplish there, because you can't put your hand over the puck. So I don't know what the goal of him diving on top of Freddie Anderson, who I think you'd want your goalie to have freedom of movement, would do, because by him diving on top of him is what kicked the puck loose in the first place. So I just thought that was kind of stupid.
Yeah, that is fair. But again, what timestamp are you at?
4:55.
Okay. Thank you.
Why? Should I just quietly watch here for a second before we get into this discussion?
I think you should quietly watch, and we just cut out this long pause. Honestly.
Okay. Well, no, we won't cut out the pause. We'll just keep having a conversation, everybody. I think
put some elevator music in. There it is. There it is. How do you feel about Stahl right now?
Now, here's the
as
problem.
You were talking about Stahl, I saw him score, and I was like, I'm biting my tongue right now because I know you haven't seen it yet. Trying not to lose my shit.
Oh, my God. Yes, dude. It's so nice to see it done to them. Oh, bless, dude. Okay, now here's the problem. They have to hold on to it. It's Vegas, so please, holy shit, just shut down for 4:45, please. Oh, what a fucking stop. Oh, he screened him. Did he tip it? Did he get a piece of that? No way. Touch that? He did. Holy fuck. What? Wow. What a fucking tip. You know what? Let's we're gonna pause the recording here. Well, we're going to overtime, everybody. So in the meantime, we're going to finally jump into my creation here. And that is what went wrong. The Avalanche made it all the way to the Western Conference Final. That means they were one of only 4 teams, one series away from another cup final, a place in which they had never lost, yet they still only walked away with 8 wins. Still only halfway to the ultimate goal, still so incredibly far from hoisting 34.5 pounds of silver above their heads. You'd think, being one of 4 remaining teams, they could have at least given Vegas a hard time. After all, lesser teams had at least taken Vegas to 6 games, but that isn't what unfolded. In fact, if anything, the Avalanche got folded. The words that have been used have been stunning, unexpected, shocking, wasted. I particularly like Logan O'Connor's quote to describe it all. Quote, "I think it just feels like a waste, to be honest," he said. 82 games, you get tons of great pieces, feel as though you have a team that can do something special. And for us, at the end of the day, we said it in training camp, it's cup or bust for us. Regardless of where you fall short, we fell super short of that goal. This team did seem poised to do something special, to meet with the equally as dominant Carolina Hurricanes in the final for an epic clash of the Titans, and the Hurricanes upheld their end of the bargain. But the Avalanche couldn't even be bothered to get close. Now, Vegas is in it for the 3rd time in their short history, and the Avalanche's season is over far too soon. Today, I will do my absolute best to explain not only what happened and what went wrong in this series, but why. The why is truly the hardest part, because the short answer is there isn't a full one. There are whys for some, and I'll not sit here and try to make any excuses for the team, but as stated previously, try and paint as full of a picture as possible. But some colors are just missing, nonsensically so. Even if the Avs were destined to lose in the series, to lose like this is genuinely inconceivable. Therefore, I won't be able to fully answer why it all went wrong. But I will endeavor to do the best that I can as I sit here still shuddering that the season has ended. The sources I will be using to help piece together this puzzle are those who also heavily watch the Avalanche and are involved with the team as well as consistently writing on them. Those being Evan Rawal of the Colorado Springs Gazette, Arif Dean of Colorado Hockey Now, various articles from The Athletic, and Hockey Psychology, who can help break down more of the gameplay aspect of it, as well as using Hockey Reference for more stats and numbers. And of course, dear listeners, I will be giving you the fan perspective, my fan perspective, Dom's fan perspective, what the show was built upon. I'm not perfect, nor is Dom, and we do not promise to have all the answers here, but just like you, I was sat watching the games in twisted agony, perhaps experience things differently than yourself or any of these other excellent writers, analysts, and personalities here today. I'll present several named sections, and the overarching themes are at least attempting to be what the Golden Knights did well and what collapsed on the Avalanche's side of things. Therefore, with much dismay, here is what went wrong for the Colorado Avalanche in the Western Conference Final. And Dom, I guess I'm just going to keep rolling. If you want to jump in at any point, there'll be natural breaks. But if you have something that you feel the need to interject immediately, feel free to just go, and then try and jump scare me, and I will let you speak. Sound like a plan?
Boo. Yeah.
All right.
Jump scare. Rawr.
Very good. First section. Vegas was ready. Prior to playing the Avalanche, Vegas had run into two youthful teams, both either making their first playoff appearance ever or their first playoffs in a long while in the Mammoth and the Ducks. Both teams, in essence, had young cores that very few of, if any of the players, had actually experienced playoff hockey. Both the Mammoth and Ducks like to use a run and gun style, and that did work on Vegas. The primary issue is both teams ran into Vegas's experience, ability to keep calm, and the VGK third period clutch factor, which we've just seen again. Something both aforementioned clubs were lacking. But hell, Utah actually had the best chance, but just couldn't finish when they needed to. They really could have taken out Vegas in round one had they been able to keep pucks out of their net, but that is what ifs, and this is reality. Ultimately, though, I don't feel the Avalanche play a run and gun style. They play off the rush as well as getting their D active to help create sustained ozone pressure. What all three teams that faced Vegas have in common, though, is speed, an abundance of it. And by the time the Avalanche came to play, Vegas had already had 12 games to come up with an effective way to not only neutralize that speed, but deliver devastating, demoralizing counterpunches. The defense of Vegas we'll dive more into here in a moment, but in short, they used a neutral zone trap to negate the Avalanche's speed and rush opportunities, blocked everything, and whatever they didn't block was a low-danger chance that Carter Hart could easily save. Short and simple, again, Vegas was ready for Colorado's speed, despite the fact that it is in a class of its own above Utah and Anaheim. Those two essentially served as Vegas's warm-up for what to expect and how to anticipate what would come, at least partially with Colorado. They could make mistakes against the former two because they knew they could still come up with victories anyway, but then required perfection against Colorado, which they got in spades. Not spades, get it. This section more serves as a setup to other points to be delved into later, but had Colorado played Vegas in round 1 or 2, I'm unsure if it would have played out differently because perhaps Vegas would not have had the opportunity to adjust and game plan like they did, but once again, that isn't reality. The overall point of it is Vegas seemed to know at every turn exactly what Colorado was going to throw, or at least attempt to throw at them, and they had the response ready for every action and outcome.
And I'll jump in here because in post-game interviews, post-series interviews, you did hear some of that from Vegas where playing against the speed of Utah and Anaheim, some of those rush chances, counter punch ability, it did give them some troubles. So if they go up against Colorado in round 1, when they haven't had a chance to workshop it, right? It was after, like, I want to say game 5 or game 4 of that series versus Utah, they started to change some things, and then they finally got it into rhythm against the Ducks. And the Ducks also play in the same division as Vegas, so they know them a bit better, could give them challenge that way. But I do wonder if, like you're saying here, Corey, if Colorado plays Vegas in the first round, Vegas in those first 4 games where they hadn't adapted versus Utah and certainly looked very vulnerable, it is worth a wonder to say, does Colorado take them out? But that's why in our current system, it matters and it's important to win your division. Vegas didn't have to worry about that because they were at top of the Pacific and Colorado was top of the Atlantic. And so in a weird way, the meeting when they did played out exactly how we would think it should in theory.
Did you say Colorado was top of the Atlantic?
Sorry, I meant the Central, but I went with oceans and said Atlantic and Pacific because that made sense in my brain. Like, I'm not going to lie. That's what just happened. I was like spacing. I was like, oh, that's the other one. Completely forgetting I was talking about divisions. So my bad, everyone.
It sucks you're the only one to make a mistake in this episode and not me.
Nards.
Darn. Anyway, next section. Injuries. As many other analysts have written before me, injuries are not an excuse for losing. Deep teams find a way around it. But we can't ignore the fact that it can be a factor. As we've now mentioned on several occasions, to win a Stanley Cup, you need just as much luck as you do skill, and a lot of that luck has to do with injuries and not just puck bounces. Teams do live and die by this. Just look at the Florida Panthers, who essentially brought back the identical roster to the one that crushed its way to a second straight Stanley Cup last year. They didn't even make the playoffs. Why? Because they couldn't stay healthy at all. It started with losing their captain and then just kept spiraling. Yes, the Avalanche had injuries in the regular season, and whenever one happened to Gabe Landeskog, the wheels came off the bus, but he was surprisingly spry and one of the Avs' top contributors in the playoffs, including against Vegas. But the Avalanche's luck had run out against Vegas. Look no further than the fact that at one point, Jack Ashawn and Nick Blankenberg were the third pair, and Burns was up on the second pair. Two guys that are 7th and 8th defensemen were your third pair. You have to play them some, and then play an injured top pair even more. In the first 2 rounds, the Avalanche were never down 1 or 2 players at a time, let alone a player at the top. Therefore, yes, the depth could step in and negate any issue that may have occurred. Even if you were down a top 6 guy like Lehkonen, you were fine. The Vegas series truly is where everything added up and finally caught up to the Avalanche. First, you're down the best defenseman in the world, and it was noticeable. Josh Manson had gotten hurt earlier in I think it was the Kings series even, and with the regularity and intensity of play, he came back when he was good enough, as all players do in the playoffs. Arturi Lehkonen and Sam Malinsky both were injured against Minnesota and were ghosts on the ice. They obviously never fully recovered from that to be at what we know is their best. You lose Val for Game 4. He's always getting hurt. It even seemed like Burns was dealing with something, according to reports, but he isn't going to compromise the Iron Man streak. Not to mention the many other injuries that we are unlikely to hear about at this point, but who knows? But there is always something going on with everyone in the playoffs. It's just how much is it going to hinder your ability to play like you're at 100%? Then, Nathan MacKinnon loses his pop when it matters most in do-or-die games. It was just like watching McDavid try and get around on his fucked up ankle. He still has that speed and ability, but it just isn't to the same level. Doesn't have the same finesse as you've seen, and is just a step slower. That's where it mattered. The guys who were normally first on pucks weren't always, or what the fuck was I trying to say there? Who were normally first on pucks weren't able to be not because they didn't want to be, but because they just physically couldn't. Vegas was dealing with injuries as well. The Mark Stone injury was major for them because he clearly makes a massive impact considering he came back, scored immediately in their comeback bid against the Avs in Game 3, and then helped put the nail in the coffin in Game 4. But the rest of Vegas's top line was still relatively, if not very healthy, because the 2 teams they played prior weren't going to necessarily grind them down with hits and relentless forecheck. But the rest of the year, their injuries were buried so deep in the lineup that it didn't affect any gameplay or lineup chemistry in a meaningful way. The injuries aren't an excuse, and what that means is it isn't an excuse for the incredibly poor play and execution we saw for 4 straight games. It does not provide to us the why as to why the Avalanche played so incredibly badly, not just badly, but outside of their character and identity. But injuries do remain a factor for why you lose individual games, however, and it gave at least a piece as to why Vegas was perhaps able to execute their structure and will over the Avalanche better than the Avalanche could over them. You want your top guys, all your guys, to be there. It doesn't help if you're only getting half a man.
And I would like to jump in here with a fan perspective because we're on a similar wavelength here of what I was just writing. Like I told you, just when I couldn't sleep and just was thinking and trying to write out some ideas. It's frustrating that in a way, the Avalanche proved so many of the haters and pundits right about not facing adversity. Yes, they did face adversity in the regular season and overcame to finish as the President's Trophy champions, right? But they had that massive bank of points in the early season to lean on. When they face finally some true adversity in a playoff environment that's more physical, with multiple star players injured, and the rest of the team got smothered by Vegas. And as you put it earlier, I actually have right here as well. They folded right away. Gabe Landeskog was one of the only players that didn't succumb to the pressure, as one would expect from the captain. But
He was a dog out there.
just those other players on the team, that depth was not able to take the step up. Nichushkin was absent. Nate just let down on the stat sheet again. Brock Nelson, I don't think it's his fault. He was snake bitten. When we're talking on the offense, I loved what he was doing out there. He was trying to be an engine, and he couldn't convert for whatever reason. And so not just defense, but offense too, when you have those injuries, and we were celebrating or talking about how deep this team was, there were some of those so-called experts, and maybe they are experts, saying that this team looks suspect, and maybe it's not as good as we think from our Avalanche bias. And again, just the fan perspective here is, I hate that the Avalanche couldn't just show up more, couldn't win a game or two, and prove those guys wrong and say, well, we put some fight in it, and over at the end of the day, we were just eventually overcome. No, they got dominated start to finish in this series. I mean, yeah, you had a couple great periods and couldn't back it up. You couldn't keep it going. Honestly, those periods and that success, that 3-goal lead is more of a fluke than anything when you look at the series as a whole. And that's upsetting. Obviously, it's upsetting to have your star players injured. You never want anybody to be injured, but especially your favorites, the guys who carry your team. I know it hurt the hopes and belief of a lot of Avalanche fans to have that happen. But man, nothing hurt worse than seeing that team just flounder out there.
Seeing McKinnon take a puck off the knee when you're already, fighting to stay alive as it is, not a very positive experience.
Exactly. And the virtually no leads in this series, right? Trailing or tied in almost every game, right? For most of every game, multiple stretches of 10 or more minutes in these games without a single shot. So when you are that second line, that third line, and you're getting more minutes, you got to step up. And I don't know if it does come down to coaching, and maybe we'll get to that eventually, of whether or not they need to roll their lines a bit more during the regular season or even during the playoffs rather than top loading their guys more. I do feel like that top line was called to do more minutes. The top D pairing was called to do more minutes, injury or not, in those first 2 rounds. And if you have the amount of talent on this roster, maybe that's a question we have to ask about rolling your lines a little bit more balanced so that you can extend everyone's longevity.
Moving on to the next section. Defense. The Vegas Golden Knights flexed in one key defensive factor in each zone against the Avalanche that created an impregnable defensive structure that the Avalanche had difficulty overcoming, leading to a 3-step process that was a visible source of frustration for the Avalanche. First, in Vegas's O zone, or the Avs D zone, Vegas's forecheck was utterly relentless, very reminiscent of the Florida Panthers of the last 2 seasons. And why wouldn't it be? Many teams are trying to do this. That's why there's so much parity, because it's been proven that it works. Vegas made sure that they were consistently the first man on pucks, and this was further exacerbated as the injuries piled up for the Avs and the players lost a step in parts of their speed and ability to hit back. But it felt like Vegas was consistently coming out the victor on 50-50 puck battles. Even if the plays didn't result in anything, Vegas consistently outmuscled the Avalanche in their own zone, a problem the Avalanche did not have until this series. Next is the neutral zone. Vegas employed a neutral zone trap by standing up at the blue line. What this means is the Avalanche could typically not execute on entries that they had been accustomed to and the ones that players excelled at, like Marty Necas and his spinorama entries. Instead, what this forces the Avalanche to do is to dump and chase the puck into their O zone and Vegas's D zone, forcing the Avalanche to go in on their own forecheck and once again get involved in those 50-50 puck battles and get out-muscled off of the puck, where Vegas could then turn it back up ice for a counterattack in transition. That transition game is a bonus factor that takes place across all 3 zones. This starts in a team's O zone, or can start in a team's O zone, and relies on the F3 or third forward to be in proper position in covering the opposing team's center. That way, so if there is a turnover, then an odd man rush opportunity does not occur. Well, the Avalanche messed up on this coverage, but at times it wasn't on purpose or even on accident, but because that third forward would play down low as the play developed to try and create a scoring opportunity, but Vegas deployed their ultimate weapon that we'll discuss here in a moment, blocks. Blocks created multiple turnovers and odd man rushes in transition that gave the Golden Knights numerous scoring opportunities, most of which went in. Then the Avalanche were often shut down in transition as the Vegas Golden Knights shut down any transition or rush plays in the neutral zone. Finally, when the Vegas Golden Knights were actually defending in their D zone, the Avs O zone, blocks. The most blocks in a 7-game series in Stanley Cup playoff history is 182 block shots by the Montreal Canadiens against the Capitals in 2010. That comes out to an average of 26 blocks per game. Montreal did win that series. The most in a single game is 62 from Columbus against Tampa across a regulation and 5 overtimes. That's 7.75 or 8 blocks per period. Columbus lost that game. The Vegas Golden Knights had 70...
I'm sorry. Let me jump in here because let's go!
Oh, bless. I see that Vegas...
Tomas Hertl, sit your ass in the box.
So funny, dude. Oh.
Give them a power play. Let's go home. Hell yeah.
That was an obvious call. Well, thank God they actually called something against this dude. He fucking blew out Marty Necas' knee. So suck shit, motherfucker. Hold on, everybody. We're gonna play call this shit together. Give us just a second here. Actually, no, I still have more to say here. It's so dramatic and serious, and now we have to.
Sorry, I interrupted such a dramatic moment.
I know, I'm all like fucking downer, and you're just like, yeah. They didn't block that one, I guess. All right.
Nope.
Let's see where we're at here. All right, we're up top, down low. Okay, Aho has the puck, whacked out of the air. It's a scramble. Svechnikov off the side of the net. Vegas clears down the ice. It is being retrieved by Shane Gostisbehere behind Freddie Anderson. Gostisbehere brings it up the ice, passes it back to Jarvis. Jarvis ahead for Nikolai Ehlers into the zone to Svechnikov. Svechnikov passes it over to Aho. Aho goes down low. He is right-hand side. Passes it back up to Gostisbehere. Gostisbehere looking. Fired by Jarvis. Score! Jarvis! No goals hardly at all, but he gets the dagger. Seth Jarvis. Oh, my goodness fucking me. Didn't let that third period comeback bullshit fucking affect you today. Let's fucking go. Don't look at the screen, Torts. Series is tied going to Vegas. Carolina did what Colorado could not. We have a series, motherfuckers. Oh, yeah. Get fucked. And that's satisfying that it was Tomas Hertl in the box. It just looked like Jarvis was kissing his teammates. And in Pride Month, that's what I'm talking about, baby. Kissing the homies.
Also in Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, so plugging that as well in this moment. That
homies.
If you're struggling, kiss the homies. Reach out to your buddies.
It's Pride Month and Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, so all the more reason in my mind to kiss the homies. All right.
Give all the homies some love.
Exactly. Give every homie some love. No matter the gender of the homie. But all right, let's
yeah, sorry. Back to our regularly scheduled programming of talking about blocks.
Let's dial it back here. So I'm gonna restart this. So when the Vegas Golden Knights were actually defending in their D zone, the Avs O zone, blocks. Most blocks in a 7-game series, Stanley Cup playoff history, is 182 block shots by the Montreal Canadiens against the Capitals in 2010 in round 1. That comes out to an average of 26 blocks per game. Montreal did win that series. The most in a single game is 62 from Columbus against Tampa across regulation and 5 overtimes. That's 7.75 or 8 block shots per period. Columbus lost that game. The Vegas Golden Knights had 75 block shots against the Colorado Avalanche across 4 games. That's 18.75 blocks, rounded to 19 blocks on average per game. Only a bit off of that all-time performance from the Montreal Canadiens facing down prime Ovi. These blocks kept Colorado on the outside and on the perimeter, and Colorado could never get on the inside into the slot. Therefore, of course, Carter Hart could make all the saves. They were easy, low-danger shots. He just had to not let in any softies. Vegas sold out at every opportunity, but Colorado truly looked as though they could do nothing at any point. And this is more just coming from me. It became so frustrating because you just watched the Avs try and make even just a pass. It didn't matter what zone it was in. They would make a pass, and Vegas' stick was just there. It was on it. We'll talk about it, that point, more here in just a second. But it just felt like they could do nothing. Everything they tried to do just went wrong. And then they got frustrated. And then when you're frustrated, you make even more mistakes. And it just felt like Vegas couldn't do no wrong. Every defensive read or play they made was perfect. It shut off, shut down, cut off every opportunity Colorado had, it felt like. And then, of course, when they would finally get one, like a Brock Nelson breakaway, it couldn't get put away. But I won't dive too much into other points here because we'll talk more about them in other sections. I truly tried to cover everything.
And this is where, I'll jump in quickly because I have 2 things here. I'll work my way backwards and just run what you did in reverse. First of all, the Canadians doing that against prime Ovi. Like, if we're talking,
I wouldn't want to block
missiles,
those shots.
Ow. I can't imagine taking one from Ovi, let alone 126 or 182. I was messing up the 26 average per game. That's brutal. That's literally more than what? That's at least 3 per period. More than that. So crazy. Or no, it's 1 every 3 periods. Anyway, point is that Vegas blocks a lot of shots. This is the big difference of bringing in John Tortorella. He is the big name in the NHL. He has always been, and he will continue to carry that torch. Can you
pause on that thought there? Because literally in this next section, I'm going to hit on that exact point.
Okay, then backing up further, let's talk about the control of the middle of the ice, right? The defensive zone, Vegas's defensive zone, or in the offensive zone, any zone really, the standing at the blue line and forcing the Avalanche to chip and chase, honestly. I have this written here. Avalanche coaching as a whole unit and as a team need to get back to basics this offseason. You have Mac and you have Marty who can make these speedy zone entries, and that's great. You have an advantage that other teams don't have, but you can't rely on that. Corey, you said it to me, I think, or maybe it was another friend of mine. Shout out Cameron.
If it's something really smart, obviously it was me.
But I don't remember who said it when it was said. Again, I wrote some of these down at like 1 a.m. when I couldn't sleep. So it could just be Delulu. But come playoff time, those fancy tricks don't always work, especially against a team like Vegas who is disciplined, who is back checking with 5 guys, swarming, and who's always holding a balanced line. Any of you who watch soccer, keeping a flat back line, consistent line, yes, it also has to do with offsides in soccer, right? But it's about managing your levels and your layers. And Vegas does that. And they did that in this series. So you couldn't just spinorama. You couldn't just skate your way around. They would basically create choke points and pinch you, force you to turn over the puck or dump and chase. And the Avalanche were not practiced at that. They were not able to get good position on those puck battles. They were forced out of their rhythm where they had to slow down and get back up to speed. When you're going at this high pace, it can be harder to stop, start, and get back up to speed. That's where Mark Stone's slower game, sure, but more slow ramp or more consistent pace makes it easier for him to keep at a flat pace, right? Or to sneak in. I know we talked about this a bit while we were watching that end of the third period, but a smothering team that eats up the middle of the ice like Vegas, you can't just use the talent alone. Like I said last time in quoting, when the Avalanche were forced out of their game, they seemed lost and had so much difficulty entering the offensive zone, like you said, Corey. So this offseason, they need to get back to basics. And during the regular season, yes, they have this incredible talent. They should use it. They can't become reliant on it. They still need to be able to chip and chase effectively, regularly. So come playoff time, when their nice little tricks that God gave them and their ability to use their speed is no longer enough, they can still play some fundamental hockey.
Yeah, and what's funny is I realize now I didn't even make a section on it, and at this point I'm not going to expand upon it because frankly there's no need to make a section to talk about it because everybody with fucking eyeballs could see it. But just real quickly, it would also help if, they had a power play that worked. Even if it was just 25% of the time. So
yeah. Well, and again, they were forced on the outside. They passed so much on the power play that they weren't getting shots, and Vegas would have an easy time clearing, right? They weren't forced out of the middle of the ice. There was no inside-outside setup. It was just, I'm going to look here. I'm looking to pass. No looking for a shot on the first go. It would then be, I'm going to stare this guy down, try to dance him out of his position, and then shoot it. And that just doesn't work against a defensively sound team that's going to be disciplined. And it might work in the regular season when there's less discipline, but in the playoffs, when you're in a conference final, that you just got to be playing your best hockey, not playing, for lack of a better word, I'm going to say it, gimmick hockey, where you're trying to use little tricks and little head moves to move a guy. That's not going to work at this level when you're down to a Final Four. It's just not. But anyway, thank you for letting me do that quick little tangent. I want to hear this next segment so we can talk more about the blocks because it is a Tortorella special.
Yes. All right. So next section here is momentum. As I have often said, hockey is a game of emotion and momentum. It is one that is only about 10% physical and 90% mental. That is because hockey is played, like all sports, by human beings and not robots. Think about if you just got some bad news before going to work. Your dog passed, your partner broke up with you, or you're dealing with a divorce or some other hardship. Would that affect your performance that workday? It doesn't matter if you're the janitor or the CEO. No one is immune to emotions or mental stress and strain. You get in your head about something and suddenly something you've done 1,000 times because it's an impossible task. Now, I am not saying, oh, boo-hoo, the multi-million-dollar athletes' lives are so hard. But I am saying, just like you and I, they are not suddenly resistant to all forms of feeling and crazy chemistry our brain gets up to, and even if they're paid like they're supposed to be. Many think that the Avalanche truly lost all momentum in Game 3 in this series. I disagree. While that game was arguably more painful and truly took away any chance the Avalanche had, because even when it felt like they had their best game, it still wasn't enough to overcome Vegas, Game 2 is where I believe the wheels truly came off the bus. The Avalanche scored the first goal of the game off the back of a player who had been getting his looks all year long. He just couldn't put it in. Ross Colton, who already had a massive goal comeback against Minnesota. You think he's carrying that swagger and momentum into the series. Then the Avalanche to continue to hold on to that lead and continue to attack to try and add to it. They were expected to counterpunch, to fight back and respond, especially on home ice. The thing they had fought to earn all season, and they were. They were doing exactly what was expected, and if they come away with this win, they go to Vegas tied 1-1, just like Carolina did tonight. But then the third period happens. Vegas puts one in Game is tied, no problem. We can get it back and win an OT. Then Vegas puts in another, then another. Suddenly, the Avalanche are staring at a deficit they can't overcome because they had already been unable to add to their lead following that first goal. Nothing was going in no matter what they tried. So what could they do now? Suddenly, the Avalanche are in a position they had literally never been in any other point in this season. Quote Arif Dean in Game 2, quote, the Avalanche's 93rd game this season, when combining regular season and playoffs, in 45 of the previous 92, nearly half, the Avs held a lead when entering the third period. They were 45-0-0, never losing in those instances. The Avalanche literally had a guaranteed win in their hands, and they knew it, and yet it was ripped away. Now they're heading to Vegas down 2-0, and you could see that this loss crushed them. Then, without making all of us relive Game 3, the Vegas Golden Knights defied all odds against the Avalanche again. The Avalanche were 52-0 when leading by multiple goals at any point in the game. The entire season, if the Avalanche had at minimum a 2-goal lead on you as an opponent, you lost. This included any playoff game. And yet the Avalanche found a way to lose this one too. And there's the voice crack just to show how upset I am. But momentum also works both ways. What Colorado lost, Vegas gained. When Vegas fired Bruce Cassidy, it wasn't because Vegas didn't have the right systems in place and didn't have ways to win or the on-ice staff to do it. We know this to be true because John Tortorella himself said he didn't effectively change any parts or aspects of the Vegas play style. Yes, and as Dom will say, he made some minor tweaks that had big impacts, but the real reason that Bruce Cassidy was fired, despite the fact that he had brought Vegas their first Stanley Cup in less than a decade of that team being an organization, was because he had lost the room. He could no longer spur the players onwards, motivate them into battle, ignite the fire inside of them that would help them take advantage of that critical mental and emotional side of the game. The players stopped responding to him when times got tough, so why not bring in the old school? John Tortorella took the chip on the shoulder of the Vegas players, the fact that everyone expected them to lose to the Avs, and turned it into the ultimate weapon, and he did it game after game. He knew just the right things to say at just the right moments to keep their heads in the right place. Mitch Marner said as much in post-game interviews. His feedback, frankly, means a lot because he's come from the complete opposite side of it when with the Leafs, where they were taxed and beaten by that mental burden. The Golden Knights harnessed their mentality and that momentum and used it to create a freight train that couldn't be stopped, all while stripping the Avs of any they had left.
Yeah. Say what you will about Torts. His track record speaks for itself. He is effective if the players respond. Not every team is going to respond to that challenge, right? It does have to come from the players themselves. The players are on the ice. They wanted it. They responded. They went out there and took it. They took that chip on their shoulder. They took that underdog mentality. They wore it as a badge of honor and as a challenge to prove people wrong. And Torts got them started. He would say the right things. He served that leader of men role, knowing how to inspire them to jump over the wall and start charging into battle. But he also inspired them to go out there and look out for their brothers, stand for one another, block shots, to as a team take those hits and not allow anything to their goalie. I guarantee, whether we saw it or not, he was talking about how this is the Jennings pairing you're against, and they're going to talk about these goaltenders and Carter Hart. Oh, all this drama, all this news. So why not you go out there? You go help your goalie. Let's make our goalie look incredible. And they did. They did. You said it, Corey. It's not like Carter Hart had to face anything difficult because they would sell out. And that is, as I was going to start saying before, that is what John Tortorella is known for. He has always been the most avid proponent of shot blocking in the league. I know we've hinted, or there are sometimes stats that say, well, blocks, if they get through, can sometimes make it harder for goalies to save. And that's true. There's more likely to be a redirection, but if there's less likely to get shots on net or high danger shots, then there's trade-offs there. And so who's to say that his theory, his approach is wrong, because it's got them this far. It's frustrating, and I guarantee you it's painful for the players on the ice. But again, that's why it takes the right team and coach combination. It's not just one or the other, when you have to have a team that buys into that mentality, that responds to that type of leadership. Because I don't think Tortorella has changed, but this Golden Knights team is playing with that grit and tenacity that really takes to his style of coaching. So ultimately, I can't help but commend them for making that move, because Bruce Cassidy is a great coach. He got them a cup, but he wasn't going to help them anymore. And say what we dislike, and the way Vegas can go cycle through pieces, they are always trying to get better, and that includes in their coaching staff, and it's working for them, as much as it pains me to say. They are tied for the fourth most cup appearances this century, despite only existing for 10 years or 9 years. So I think the most is 5, and they're tied for 3 appearances. So yeah, well, that's the stat.
Here's what fucking pisses me off. Vegas gets down to block shots. They're able to get right back up and fucking score, a goal with a guy coming fresh out of the box. The Avalanche try and block shots, and fucking Nathan McKinnon's knee gets blown out.
Well, and I think that maybe that's coaching. Maybe there is a form, right? I don't know.
I don't know.
I've never played hockey, but there, how you can injure yourself if you slide incorrectly in baseball, and you can have some serious injuries. It could take a micro movement, some slight adjustments, and it could just be luck. And the fact that they're Vegas, and they just seem to have things go their way. Maybe it is just blind luck that they can get away with it. Maybe their bodies are just calloused all over because they're used to doing this. I don't know, but it's working for them. And this is back into we started this, or you started this, Corey, with the question of why. I don't know why it works. I don't know how it works, but I have to admit it's working for them. So I hate that I have to give them that credit, but I really do. Can't say anything against it for them.
Yeah, I guess so. Next section here is contributions. And to be totally honest, I don't really have a full thing written out here. And I'm just going to give you my honest and candid thoughts here. I'm knocking stuff over. We can sit here and, nitpick and be critical of individual players' performance in this series specifically. And I mean, rightfully so. For example, we can be critical of Brock Nelson and pretty much the entire second line, though Val Nichushkin did have a nice goal in this series. Brock Nelson had a hard playoffs, and that's really frustrating because after last year, where he also had a hard playoffs, you would think that now that he's been with the team, he had a full season where he was very good. He was, third on the team in goals, had over 30 goals, and has consistently had good playoff numbers when he was with the New York Islanders. You just expected more, and he just could never get himself going. He had 3 series to do it, and he could never do it. Or, Marty Necas, which I'm still 50-50 on, because, you know, you want to be critical of Marty Necas. Dude was second on the team in points through all of playoffs. Yes, goals are what put points on the board, but he was also setting up the people to score the goals, you know, that put points on the board. Nathan MacKinnon quite literally had his worst playoffs or worst series of the entire playoffs. He didn't score a goal, which he has never done. Vegas somehow found a way to create stat lines and headlines and, you know, things that have happened to teams that have literally never happened ever in the for that team in recent history. And, you know, we can sit here and try and blame individual players for people who, you know, didn't show up in this series, because Vegas's big boys showed up. Mark Stone, you know, he was out. He comes back immediately, scores that power play goal in the third period to get them going in game 3. Mitch Marner has been a playoff demon. He leads in points. Vegas's big boys showed up when Colorado's big boys could not. But fuck, who did show up for Colorado? You know, everybody wants to nitpick and find an individual player to blame. How can you? Who did show up? The only person who did show up was Gabe Landeskog and then Mackenzie Blackwood when they finally put him in. So it's just, I don't even feel like I can, you know, fully try and nitpick and be critical of individual players here, because nobody was able to make an impact, really. Nobody was able to be a difference maker in this series. And I guess maybe that's the whole point of the contributions. And we said before that despite, you know, Brock Nelson not scoring, or maybe when other guys' scoring was down, that it didn't really matter because it was being made up for by other guys stepping in, whether it was in the bottom 6 or middle 6, top 6, doesn't matter, or by the defense, people stepping in and getting those contributions and getting those scoring chances. After all, the Avalanche against Minnesota set a NHL record for most individual scorers in a series. That is fucking insane. 16. No team has ever done that in a single series. They were getting contributions from all over the place. And that's why it makes even less fucking sense, which we'll talk about here in just a second. I somehow always manage to segue myself into the next section perfectly, is how do you go from having 16 individual goal scorers, I don't give a fuck if they went into empty nets or not, 16 individual goal scorers, to all of a sudden basically having none. None. I do not understand it. That's why it doesn't make sense. Where did the contributions go? How could no one do anything? And that's what we were trying to answer here today. This was my best guess. Everything before this is the best guess as to why. And like I said, I probably didn't even touch on everything. I am one person. I can only do so much. But that's why I will link all of the sources so you can go and make your own decisions. But I am just going to, because we're talking about nonsensicals, I'm just going to roll right into the last point here. And that is just nonsensicals. The shit that truly does not add up about this entire series. I'm going to steal some additional points from Arif Dean. From his article, 5 mind-boggling stats from the Avalanche's Western Conference collapse. As we already spoke on some, actually, but we do really need to highlight the rest. Quote, in the playoffs, losing in regulation or overtime doesn't make a difference. But when you look back at the season, it's fascinating to see how bad that week against Vegas truly was. The Avalanche lost 2 games in a row in regulation 3 times during the regular season. Do you know how long the regular season is? They had just 1 playoff loss leading up to the Western Conference Final against the Knights. Not only did they lose 4, not only lost 4 in a row, but they also suffered their first 3-game losing streak. And on top of that, they also lost all 4 of them in regulation. Quote, at no point this season, in any 4-game stretch, did the Avalanche score only 7 goals. They did that against the Vegas Golden Knights. Quote, the biggest factor for why the offense dried up was the lack of goal scoring from the top of the lineup. The Avalanche had 6 players finish the season with 20 or more goals. 3 of them scored more than 30. None of them tallied a goal in this season against Vegas. MacKinnon, who won his first Maurice Rocket Richard trophy, leading the league with 53 goals, did not score a goal in the playoffs or in a playoff series for the first time in his career. Martin Necas, who had a career-high 38 goals and 100 points in the regular season, finished the playoffs with just 1 goal, and it came in Game 2 against the Minnesota Wild. Brock Nelson had just 2 postseason goals, both empty netters, and 1 assist. It's a massive drop-off in offensive production for Nelson, who had 33 goals and 65 points in the regular season. He did not score against Vegas. Makar finished with 20 goals in the regular season and had 4 in the first 5 games of the playoffs. He did not score after that. Given that he was playing with an injury, he also only dressed in 2 games against the Knights. Parker Kelly and Lehkonen each had 21 regular season goals, and they also did not score against the Knights. Now, I also want to talk about Carter Hart. The playoffs are truly fascinating for creating heroes out of players who you would never expect. A goalie who can and was be average his whole career can suddenly become a brick wall of which the world has never seen, but it is truly remarkable that a guy like Carter Hart, who had been relatively steady but an average goaltender at best his entire career, and then was out of the game for over a year with some heavy things likely weighing on his mind, to be able to come back and finish the year with the Knights below average, and suddenly is just an absolute stud in the playoffs. Ultimately, it is the Vegas defense that has stepped up more than he has, but how can nothing get by him, though the Carolina Hurricanes are thankfully changing that narrative. This section is more of a rant than anything else because I can't fully answer why, because it doesn't make sense what happened to the Avalanche. I would not be surprised that if you broke this down into math terms, that this series was an utter statistical anomaly. I won't say more because I have and probably will repeat myself multiple times as we have gone on and will continue on to in the last section. Dom, I will pause. What are you at?
I got a nonsensical for you.
Go for it.
This era, I call it the McKinnon-Makar era. That's what I like to think of it as. Yet to win a single elimination game. They won the Cup in 2022 without facing elimination. Not once has this team been able to step up and play desperate hockey when their survival depends on it. I'm realizing that's wrong because in Game 6 last year that we were at, that would have been an elimination game against Dallas.
Aha!
However, they
also
did
it the year before against Dallas, by the way.
On the road?
Yes.
On the road. Okay, well then
because they won Game 5 against Dallas to force it to come back to Denver for a Game 6 to keep themselves alive. So that put the series 3-2.
Okay, so I just suck at research.
It's okay.
I suck at research, you guys.
But
the fact is that
they still haven't done it with any regularity. So
they haven't been able to come back from down in a series and overcome a deficit to win a series. So even if they've won a single game here or there, they've won a battle but lost the war every time. With all the talent, they just can't seem to find that next level of desperation to win and find a way through when their survival depends on it. I have been the one saying I was more upset with Marty Necas, even though he did more in the playoffs. I know I've been a little bit critical because I've also been one of his big supporters, thinking that the flack he gets for the playoffs is it's unfair. But now I'm starting to get annoyed for supporting him and then being disappointed, even though, again, he had a good first couple of rounds and then just wouldn't shoot. Yes, he set up some great things at points and had some wonderful assists, but I just wonder what if he would have shot more. Meanwhile, I'm the one hyping up Brock Nelson because I'm like, at least he was shooting and driving the net, even if he couldn't get it through. But again, you need to have desperation and luck or just find a way and get the puck in the back of the net. I mean, we saw this in how meekly the Avs exited the playoffs in the Western Conference Final without resistance. Like that, you get demoralizing pain in Game 2 and then again in Game 3, and you're like, why do I even bother showing up in Game 4? And it was clear. Gabe showed up. We said this. Not so certain about everyone else. And yeah, some of them are injured, but again, injuries aren't an excuse. It just, it doesn't make sense to me that with all the talent on this team, that realistically, you have to have a lead or in a series, or this team just doesn't win. And it feels like if the Avalanche let their opponent get 3 wins in a series, it's a best of 5 series. If the Avalanche are not winning after 5 games, they're cooked. And it shouldn't be that way with their level of talent. If they don't have the President's Trophy and don't have home ice advantage, they're cooked. And then when they do have, they just get swept by Vegas. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. It doesn't make sense. Hence, it belongs here in Nonsensicals. This is my little shorter rant as the part-time or number 2 Avs fan on this podcast, because I just found that frustrating. And I know my takes were a little bit against the grain, and I'm very open to being wrong. But it feels like when I'm trying to have some optimism or support for these guys, they're letting me down. When I'm being critical of these guys, they're letting me down. And if this team isn't up, they're letting me down. Like, do you need a handicap or something where you just start with a win in the series in the Western Conference Final if you're going to play Vegas? I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me with all of the talent, all of the goal scoring, like you said, why this team couldn't figure it out, put themselves together to win a game. All the mental you mentioned, Corey, about this game being 90% mental. McKinnon, it has enough mental for a whole team going on. He's a psycho in a good way when it comes to this, but he's a psycho. And you have Makar, consummate professional. You have Gabe, who you know Landy's leading that locker room well. Burns has been here. Like, you would think this team would have the mental fortitude to figure it out and to overcome. And I said it earlier, but it really frustrates me that they proved all the haters right and fell apart the way they did.
This is my short rant, he says.
Section. You know, relative to my normal rants, I'm doing my best.
Last section. Why? Vegas plays a game that is incredibly similar to that of the LA Kings. The biggest difference between the two is that Vegas has the Minnesota levels of talent to still generate offense. You'll recall all the way back in round 1 when discussing the Kings series, I was consistently livid about how the Kings were constantly in the way, blocking shots, sticks, and passing lanes, seeming to read the Avalanche's every move and intention. And then even if the Avalanche could get something through, they had a white-hot goaltender who could step up and make the stop. Sound familiar? Almost identical to a lot of the strategies that Vegas executed on in a 4-game series, and that's why we have to remember, or that's what we have to remember, is this was a 4-game series. It wasn't just lost in games 3 and 4. Things were going wrong for the Avs and going right for Vegas from the very beginning. And as Gabe Landeskog said, the Avs were just finding ways to lose. But Vegas was also finding ways to win. The Avalanche were able to overcome the Kings because despite the fact that the Kings could limit them in a 1 or 2 goal win, the Kings never had the offensive weaponry to hope to get out in front of or at least stay in front of the Avs. Adrian Kempe and Panarin are not enough. Not to mention any contribution offensively from the bottom 6 or D-core was essentially out of the question. But Vegas has that offensive firepower, that bottom 6 support, and even shots and goals from their D-core. They have what the Kings lacked. So even though Colorado never got shut out, they couldn't overcome getting absolutely eaten alive in all 3 zones. No one except for PK Subban apparently took Vegas as seriously as they should have. Not even me. Why would I? On paper, their team looked great, but all year the execution had just been off. They were constantly going to OT, couldn't close out games, and consistently lost to playoff level opponents. Hell, if they were in any other division, they wouldn't have even made the playoffs. And now here they are in the Stanley Cup final. But that is why they always say you just have to get into the dance. This section here is basically just a summation of everything else we discussed up to this point. Season is over. This was our best attempt at the who, what, where, when's, how's, and why's. Well, the whys will never fully be understood because the utter collapse from Colorado still just does not make sense. Speaking to fans of other teams, rivals even, doesn't make sense. It truly transcends stats, numerics, and measurable metrics, both on and off the ice. It would truly seem impossible that the Avalanche could have been swept in the Western Conference Final. I'm not even implying that the Avalanche couldn't lose. They absolutely can and did, obviously. It's just the way in which they lost just doesn't make sense, and I will beat that dead horse until it is glue because my brain continues to spin even now. How? How does a hockey team that has done all the Avalanche have done with the accomplishments both at the individual player and team level, even on an organizational level, with everything they had done and been through, how do they allow their season to end like this? Why were they not even able to steal one game? The Ducks and Mammoth each won 2 against Vegas. Carolina just won their first. Colorado would have beaten both. How could they have not beaten Vegas even once? Some matchups are just bad ones. For example, Dallas on paper should have been better than the roster that Edmonton had last year, but was beaten anyways. Hell, the Colorado Avalanche 2021 had an objectively weaker roster than the one they brought against this Vegas team and still got 2 games on them. But I suppose we neglect the fact that Vegas changed too. That old Vegas roster didn't have an Eichel or a Marner. Other superstars they do now. They didn't have John Tortorella there to really do something more than motivate and spur them onwards. Vegas was ready for the challenge and they stepped up to bat. There wasn't just one team in this matchup. There were 2. There was probably more I wanted to write, but I think that's all I'm going to say.
You know, I think that's a good phrase right there, just saying that there were 2 in this matchup. On the flip side, there were 2 teams in this matchup, and the one that won was the one that showed up. So, man, it sucks. It still stings. Much like we said earlier, need to take this as a wake-up call. But we've both gone on some rants, and I know we've processed this a lot. If I know we can't be perfect, everything that we're gonna miss something. So I think we should just keep it rolling. And if you guys have any ideas that we missed, this is an opportunity. Let us know. Comment below.
Yeah.
We can quote you on here. We talked about wanting to be able to collaborate. If you, as a listener, as a fan, have something you want to say, an idea you want to put out there, let us know. We'd be happy to share it, talk about it, process through it. So be sure to reach out.
And I mean, if you think we're wrong, that's fine. There's no denying, I think, the fact that the Avalanche lost 4 games. It doesn't make sense. You can't argue with that. If you think that the way I've presented some of it or, some of my points were incorrect, I mean, that's okay. Again, that was the whole point, is that this is my fan perspective. And I might interpret the game differently than you do. As a matter of fact, there were people, for example, in the Montreal and Carolina series, a Montreal fan, might see that game as, wow, that was probably one of the games that went to OT. That was probably Carolina's best game, man. I can't believe we got them to OT. And then an Carolina fan will say, man, that was one of our worst games of the season. I don't know how we managed to win in OT. That's a real interaction that happened, by the way. I'm not just being, I'm not being facetious. I'm not being hyperbolic. Like, that actually was a conversation people had. I'm paraphrasing, but so
I know you are. Yeah.
If you saw this series differently than we did, that's fine. And that's why, there were so many sections here. There isn't one answer for what went wrong. If there was, I would tell you, but there isn't. Which is why, I pulled from a bunch of different articles, a bunch of different sources, which, again, I will link all of them in here. Unfortunately, some of them are paid subscriptions. But I mean, you are free to form your own conclusion. I'm sure the Avalanche are going to be forming many conclusions in this offseason because this one is going to go down in Avalanche history. Like we said last week, the Avalanche can never just lose. They have to lose in the most devastating fashion possible. But the only thing we can do now is move on. Yeah, we can bring it up, but what's the point in it at this point? This series is over. The next one is being played, and we will obviously focus on that one much more next week. But I think you all deserve the right to hear what we had to think, and this was, I knew, going to dominate a majority of the episode. I'm kind of glad that I wrote enough substance to do so. But that's all we can do at this point because it's happened. We cannot change it now. We cannot change the past, but only look ahead to tomorrow, where we do have the possibility and the option for change. So we just regroup and say what we always say. There's always next year, and hope that the Avalanche can come back better. But there is some other Avalanche news. I do not believe we've had the press conference yet, and we know that there was a reason why the Avalanche postseason press conference took so long to occur. It is due to the fact that the Nashville Predators were aggressively pursuing Avalanche GM Chris MacFarland for their GM and president role. The Preds were given permission to speak to CMAC, but it was seen as unlikely that CMAC would leave the Avalanche organization. Well, as unlikely as it may have seemed, CMAC has in fact left the Avs and joined a Central Division rival, Nashville Predators. Joe Sakic has resumed all GM duties as well as maintaining his presidency for the foreseeable future. Those are the facts. Now, here's my opinion, because you asked for it by listening to this show. I don't like that CMAC left for a division rival. We've already had to deal with that enough in recent memory with players, but to be totally honest, I don't have any hard feelings. CMAC was unafraid to make moves when he was with the Avs, and he helped keep this team massively competitive following the 2022 Cup run, despite having to navigate the Landeskog injury, Nichushkin controversy, rant and trade, and I'm sure plenty of other headaches that we on the outside will never actually know about. Not to mention, he was still assistant GM when the Avs won the Cup. Therefore, he was a massive gear in that machine as well. But the Predators present an interesting challenge going forward, so I'll be curious to see how he navigates this upcoming draft and offseason with them. But with CMAC at the helm, I have a scared feeling that the Preds might end up being much better than we expect them to be, much faster than they should be. So, well done by the Preds to pursue and land their guy, and I truly wish all the best to CMAC. There are always things to criticize, but I really can't complain overall with his tenure, besides the fact that I wish another cup would have come with it. He helped build and maintain an excellent team. That being said, I can't hide my excitement at the fact that Joe Sakic is back in the driver's seat again for this team. I mean, he made the Cup roster of arguably the best Avalanche team to ever lace them up. He is the only individual to ever win a Cup as a player captain and GM with the same organization. Sakic is incredibly committed to the Avalanche organization and its success, clearly. I can't fully describe the confidence I have going forward. I am simply incredibly optimistic as a fan because of the history of success that Sakic has. I believe that he can make the right moves to help push this team to their next Stanley Cup. Dom, thoughts on the GM specifically?
Well, something you said there, it's a question. I wonder how much control CMAC had. And again, we don't know what goes on in these rooms, what goes on in every deal, who's on the phone every time. But he, in Nashville, is going to have a little bit of freedom to make his own moves. Why would he want to leave Colorado for a different place? Sure, maybe there's more money. Maybe he likes Nashville better as a place to live. Or maybe has Sakic been vetoing or overruling certain moves this whole time, and maybe Sakic has been more responsible for the success. CMAC holds the title, but Joe holds the final say. I don't know. This is a complete theory. I have nothing to back this up.
It is all speculative.
It is all speculative, but I do wonder, right? And like you said, Corey, the last time this team won the Cup, it was with Sakic in the driver's seat, but CMAC was also there. So what I think ultimately, and what I'm trying to see here, I am interested to see, since we've only seen them together, at least recently, I'm interested to see how each of them do without the other. Because again, we don't know how that relationship is and how that worked, right? And I took it from maybe trying to give more credit to Joe, right? And that's how I initially approached this. But it is a test equally for both of them to do the job on their own without the other one present. So, we'll see in time. So my speculation is more of an open-ended question of let's see how each of them do on their own.
But, I also think it's an opportunity for somebody like Andrew Cogliano to really step up in the front office role that he's been given and perhaps maybe even be the future GM of this organization. He is very well liked, very well respected by the Avalanche, by their fan base, by the front office. So perhaps this is also an opportunity for him to start being mentored into taking that role. So that way the Avalanche continue to have a good front office for the long time, because we see plenty of dysfunctional ones and we would never want the Avalanche to fall into that. So I trust anybody mentored by Joe Sakic. And if that means molding Cogliano into essentially the next Joe Sakic, I am perfectly happy with that.
That is a wonderful idea I didn't even think of, but you're a genius.
I try. Next order of business is that it has been announced that Jared Bednar will remain as coach of the Avalanche. This was the right choice. When Nathan MacKinnon himself says he doesn't want another coach and won't play for anyone else, it's probably best to listen. I truly believe that room would have been lost immediately had Bednar been fired. The core came together under Bednar, and the players are as connected as they are partially due to the way he coaches. He was in a unique position, as we mentioned previously, by not being a part of the NHL coaching carousel. He was brought on specifically to coach the young Avalanche team and basically raise them from nothing to cup champions. There isn't a coach who understands this group better than Bednar does. And I don't see a better or positive response to a different coach than Bednar. Can we still be critical of Bednar and want more postseason success? Of course. But as we mentioned in the prior section, it does not solely lie on Bednar. The reason that the Avalanche were swept by the Vegas Golden Knights, which is funny. I never actually made a coaching section. So, I am glad Bednar is here to stay. Let's look to him and Sakic bringing another cup to Colorado before the Sharks and Ducks get too good.
Yeah, I mean, we sprinkled in some coaching things. Ultimately, it's the players on the ice that win the game. It's the players on the ice that lose the game. We can only put so much on coaching. Yes, good coaching can make a positive impact, but Torts has said himself, in his mind, he's not doing that much. It's up for the players to go out there and to play the better game, to score the puck more often. I expressed my feelings on Bednar, so I don't want to dive too deep into that, Corey. But while we're talking about other Colorado news, could I give a brief Eagles update from the AHL?
Please do. I do actually know where this is at. So please do give the Eagles update. It has been exciting.
Yes, both conference finals are best of 7 series, and both are tied at 2 games apiece.
Are they really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, Toronto won a crazy overtime game at Wilkes-Barre Scranton in Game 2 to go up 2-0 in that series before the Penguins affiliate stormed back to win 2 straight in Toronto. So they are now playing a best of 3 game series. The next game also in Toronto before the final 2 are in Wilkes-Barre Scranton. A little bit differently, but still, yeah, they go 2-3-2 for the home games, which I have seen this format before. In other leagues, this is not something that's new to me per se, but I think it just has to do with trying to minimize the cost and travel overall, while still basically saying if you are the higher seeded team, you get games 6 and 7. So
that could be a big advantage.
It can be, assuming you don't go down 3 games early and then have to play game 5 on the road. So that's where it levels out, right? If you play well enough, then you still get the best out of 3 games at home, and you get the last 2 guaranteed. So no matter what, the elimination games are played at home. So for Colorado fans, no matter what, the series will be ended here in Colorado, be it in Game 6 or Game 7, be it if Colorado wins or if Chicago does. But this is the closest we'll get to a Hurricanes versus Avalanche series, as last time, remember, Chicago Wolves are the Carolina Hurricanes affiliate, and yet they are in the same conference. It's weird, but it's the AHL, so we like it. This series started actually with Chicago getting a 3-2 victory here in Colorado before Colorado responded with a 5-2 victory of their own. and followed it up with a 3-2 victory on the road in the most recent game on June 3rd. Chicago did eke out a 2-1 win. So now they next play at 7 p.m. tonight when you are hearing this Friday, before returning to Colorado to play on Sunday and Monday nights if necessary for that last game 7. So if you're looking for something to do on Sunday night and possibly Monday, go take in an Eagles game. This series has been good. This is what we were hoping to see in a cup final from Avs versus Canes. And, this is the furthest that the Eagles have been. So all it takes is 2 wins and they're going to a Calder Cup final.
Yeah, it is. It's been really exciting, to be honest with you. I mean, obviously, I wish the Colorado Eagles had swept them, as I always do. But, I mean, it's been a super close, super competitive series. Ivan named so nice, you had to say it twice. In game 3, actually scored the go-ahead goal with 50 seconds left to give the Eagles, in the third, to give the Eagles the lead and obviously the win. I mean, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, maybe minus 1 game. Every game has been by a 1-goal margin.
Correct.
If I'm
Yeah,
correctly.
the Eagles have the largest margin of victory of a 5-2 win, but otherwise every game has been a 1-goal margin.
Okay, yeah, good. Then I did remember correctly. There was one outlier there. So, I mean, yeah, it's been awesome. The Eagles have a really great organization. The players at that level are really great together. And obviously, again, there's going to be some guys who are competing for roster spots next year, and they've actually been doing really, really well in these playoffs. Gavin Brindley and DJ Hughes specifically. So it'd be great to see Brindley back up with the Avalanche next year. I genuinely think he can become a really great bottom 6 and maybe even a middle 6 winger. I would love to see it. And I think DJ Hughes also has the ability to really become something. He's stepped into the next level of hockey from college pretty seamlessly, pretty effortlessly. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see what he can do as well.
And we can't forget Trent Miner as well, continuing to be locking it down between the pipes.
Yeah, Miner has been amazing, which is why it was really interesting when it was announced. The name is escaping me because it was a complicated Russian one, but the Avalanche have signed another goaltender to an entry-level contract, which is all well and good, although I assume this goaltender will be on loan to his team in the KHL, just because next year, the Avalanche have Miner, Posh, and Nabokov. It's becoming a bit of a logjam. I mean, I am not complaining that the Avalanche have a wealth of solid goaltending talent right now. That is a good thing. Good goalies are hard to find and cultivate, let me tell you. But I'm just like, why are we bringing in a 4th goaltender? So I assume he will be back to K.
Yeah, I would assume so as well. But if it does become an issue of forcing the way in, the way I see it is getting to those assets and scouting ahead of time before others so that you can then be able to trade and keep this period of success going, extend this window as much as you can.
And I mean, you never know. Maybe the Avalanche just can smartly continue to, even if they don't always have the draft picks, just keep picking up the pieces here and there from college free agents and shit like that. And yeah, like you said, extend their window. So who knows? Only time will tell, because Father Time is undefeated. Woo! All right, that was stupid.
You know what else is undefeated in the offseason? And I'm just going to do this shameless moment.
What's that?
Cap space. Cap space is undefeated.
Caps.
You know which team has the most cap space?
The Sharks.
With 40 million.
Holy shit.
40 million. Oh, we're going to be getting a new blue line. I cannot wait to talk about it soon when that happens.
Honestly.
Oh my God. We are buying a new blue line.
Give Robo that fucking 14 million that he wants. You're set there. It said that he actually might go to the Hawks. Robo and Bedard. Ooh, that'll be nasty. That's nasty to think about. I like that, though. If Robo literally goes to any other team, I can actually root for him way more because he plays for his cat, and I can respect that.
Yeah. Obviously, if you're playing for the cat,
exactly.
That's big dubs anybody can get on board with.
Well, looking at our time here, I feel that it would frankly be a bit disingenuous if we started our finals analysis with only about 10 minutes left. So I will leave you with this parting thought before we talk about our fun fact for the day. And that's, if you thought the finals were going to be boring and low scoring, boy, were you wrong, i.e. me. I thought that thing. I didn't necessarily think they were going to be boring, but I did think they were going to be a lot tighter than they were going to be. But I mean, these finals have just, through 2 games, have just been punch, counterpunch, counterpunch, punch, punch, big moment goal. So, yeah, you really actually can't ask for more. The entertainment value of these games have been very high. Would you agree with that, Dom?
Oh, this is to all the haters when I was saying don't hate till you've watched this series. Now I'm hating on Vegas because it's what I do, and yet I'm loving every minute of the series. It is action packed. Like everyone who thought this, I'm gonna say it because I was the one who was pushing back against the narrative that this was the worst case series outcome, and yet the best 2 teams got here, and they are giving us cinema hockey. Like if you're a neutral, you yes. Man, you can't get me with EDM when I'm talking. I'm gonna get thrown off. You know that you can just distract me with the beat boop music and lasers.
All right.
Anyway, none of us are neutral. All 31 franchises that aren't Vegas are rooting for Carolina. And yet for all of us that are not Carolina fans, we can't help but just let our jaws drop and enjoy what is on the television. This has been box office television for what is this series? Like the game 1, oh my God. And then we've talked about game 2. They're just a brief summary. You go down 2-0. You do to Vegas what they normally do in the third period. Vegas does their thing anyway. And then you say, bing bong, fuck your life. We win in overtime. Yay, Carolina. We have a tied series. This one's going to 7. And we will get a multi-overtime game eventually because these teams are just so close and they're playing such a similar style. It is electric. It is such great hockey. So once again, we're going to say it, watch the hockey game. We will cover it. We will do our best. But watch the hockey game. You are missing out if you are not watching this series.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
They're a good match for each other. But yeah, obviously we want to give the series the respect that it's due. And frankly, we can give it more of a overview because by next week when we come back to you, more of the series will have been played. And for all we know, it will be over. I think Dom's right. I do sense a 6 or 7 game series here.
Yeah, you got to correct yourself there.
It's been going away recently, so I think I'm safe, but I do not sense a short series. Obviously, now it has to go at minimum 5 games, but with how both of these teams have been playing and how small the margin for error is, I can't see one team, just taking game after game. It just isn't going to happen. Although I was a little worried that that's what was going to happen tonight, but Carolina locked the fuck in, which we all obviously appreciate.
Certainly so. And you're right. We will do it more justice, but man, I'm doing everything in my power not to say it, but all you haters, listen to Dom next time when he says that this is going to be a good series. Don't knock it till you try it. And I hate the frickin' Vegas Golden Knights just about as much, maybe not, if not more than anybody. But man, this series is something. We are getting... We want the Avalanche to be there. We all did. We had to move on. This is an incredible series. This is probably the best series we could have gotten at the end of the day based on how these teams are playing each other. No matter how we feel about it personally, this is some A-class hockey we get to watch every night, or every other night to be more accurate.
Yeah. I think that is a great way to put it. So here is your fun fact today, and it has to do with the Stahl brothers. So, in case you didn't know, there are actually 4 Stahl brothers that I think were all born 2 years apart from each other. There is Mark Stahl, Jared Stahl, Eric Stahl, and Jordan Stahl. The only active Stahl still is Jordan. So I thought that each Stahl brother had won a Stanley Cup. This was wrong. Only 2 of the 4 Stahl brothers have actually won a Stanley Cup. But here is where it is interesting. Mark Stahl, unfortunately, in 17 seasons, did not win a Stanley Cup. He did reach a cup final, one of the most heartbreaking of all time, with the Rangers in 2014, but obviously lost to the Los Angeles Kings. Jared Stahl actually really was never a solid NHL player. He only played 18 NHL games, but also played with the Carolina Hurricanes, interestingly enough. And then Eric Stahl won the Stanley Cup with the Carolina Hurricanes, with their only Stanley Cup win, all the way back in 2006 with, obviously now coach, Rod the Bod Brind'Amour. And then Jordan Stahl is the most interesting case here, who is obviously active captain of the Carolina Hurricanes, who then could also win a cup with the Hurricanes. But Jordan Stahl has actually won the cup before as well, all the way back with the Pittsburgh Penguins in 2009, the first of their 3 cups with the Crosby, Malkin, and Letang trio, which sucks for Jordan because he was part of a trade package that sent him away from 2 more cups. Oy. But Jordan Stahl actually has a record for the longest period between, I don't know if it's like Stanley Cup wins or just between cup final appearances. I think it's that. Cup final appearances, but he obviously has gone now 17 years, which just credit to his longevity there. That's kind of remarkable to think about, that he obviously won a cup all the way back in 2009 with Sidney Crosby. And then here he is now 17 years later with the chance at a second Stanley Cup, but also with Carolina, same team that his brother won it with before. Just weird stuff in my mind, but I think equally as interesting.
Yeah, and to add on to that, because we both were in the same realm of fun facts, and they're both a very long time. Corey, did you know that Jordan Stahl set the record, which this might have been what you were thinking of, for the most elapsed time between Stanley Cup final goals by a single player at 6,202 days. The previous record holder, his brother, Eric Stahl, at 6,198 days.
There you fucking go.
His brother held the record doing the same thing with a long time between Stanley Cup final goals, and he broke his record. He's the last one. He had to leave his mark, but because the others are all retired, of course. And a good way you can know he's the last one is he's the one with the visor.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But yeah, isn't that so funny? Yes, the Stahl brothers have touched the NHL for a long time.
It won't be the same without them.
I know. It truly is like a transitional period here as we move into the next generation. Well,
if you're talking transitional, I'm not sure if you saw one of the other ones I sent to you, but it takes only 5 degrees of separation.
I did see that.
Do you want to save that?
Yeah, let's save it. You can use it next week, honestly.
Because that here, cool. You guys have an Easter egg to look forward to for next episode, because it is so mind-boggling to me that it's a true fun fact.
Yes, it's like your Bacon number, your Kevin Bacon number, although that might be an absolute unk reference right there. We're old, I guess. Well, everyone, the clock is counting down to the final. How do I always make myself laugh? Clock is counting down to the final horn. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this episode of the Captain Avalanche Fancast. If you have something you want to know about the Avalanche, Sharks, or just hockey in general, reach out to us on our socials and we'll be happy to try and answer it. The best thing you can do, oh my goodness, if you like what we're doing here, is to follow us on whatever platform you're using and to share this podcast everywhere you can with everyone you know. I'm Captain Avalanche Corey.
And I'm Dom from the Tank.
Check out our new episodes every week. Thanks, everyone.
Make yourself laugh.